and this leads us into the top story on a slow Tuesday, but it's still a significant story on any Tuesday. J.J. Watt seriously considering the Cleveland Browns. This from Mary Kay Cabot of the Cleveland Plain Dealer. Now, there's two ways to look at this. One way is J.J. Watt is firing a warning shot to any other team that may be seriously interested that it may be time to make a move, even if you don't know what the salary cap's going to be. I'm thinking about the Browns. Hello, is this thing on? Is there anyone else out there? Because we're not hearing any other teams rushing because of the salary cap. The Browns could pull it off because they've got the cap space. The other side of it too, Peter, and this brings us back to the Packers. I said this last night on PFTPM. It reminds me at a lower level, the legitimacy that this move would give the Browns. It reminds me of Reggie White choosing the Green Bay Packers in '93. Not that J.J. Watt is currently anywhere close to White at his prime, but this doesn't happen for the Browns. There isn't a free agent that a lot of teams are like, oh, we're interested in him, and that guy even seriously considers the Browns. When does that ever happen? When does it ever happen that a guy of this stature is even linked to the Browns? So even if they don't get him, just the fact that they're at the table, that's got to be encouraging for Cleveland Browns fans.
Well, Mike, let's talk a little bit about history here, because I think it's important when you consider a guy like Reggie White and a guy like J.J. Watt. Remember, think back to 1993 when Reggie White was on the market. Okay, that's 28 years ago. And that was one of the first big stories I ever did for Sports Illustrated. I went on the trip on the plane with Jimmy Sexton, the agent, Reggie White, and Harry Galbraith, who was a guard at the time, but who was also a Jimmy Sexton client who was taking some of these trips. And it was really interesting, the trip to Cleveland and how the Browns went all out. Bill Belichick was there at a dinner with a bunch of players and Reggie White and Sexton. And it was real wooing, okay? Now, last year and this year, there can be no such wooing, obviously, because of the pandemic. But I think there's a couple of similar things. Number one, this would be, even though the Browns, were on the verge of really doing something great a month ago, and accomplish more than any of us thought they would by winning a road playoff game and then giving Kansas City all it wanted, in the next round of the playoffs. I think the Browns might be ready, and we all can see it, to take that next step. When they wooed Reggie White 28 years ago, that was a team that a year later was actually going to make the playoffs. So I think in Cleveland, they are looking at this with the other teams in the division not being bulletproof anymore. They're looking at this as, hey, listen, this could be our time. And to get a guy like J.J. Watt to give you, I think, 2 really good years, plus, Mike, think of it. Who's the leader of the Browns on defense right now? There isn't really one guy who you would say is the guy on defense. Whereas, you got Jarvis Landry on offense, you got Mayfield. You've got guys on offense that really kind of fill that bill. And I think Watt could help in that way as well.
And, it's funny you talk about the Browns trying to get Reggie White in '93. That means if he had chosen the Browns, the year that he otherwise won a Super Bowl with the Packers would have been his first year with the Baltimore Ravens in '96. So alternate universe fun as it relates to where Reggie White could have ended up and what city he could have been in, not because of his own choosing, but because Art Modell chose to move the team there. But I think the other sign is in this weird kind of offseason where a lot of veterans who thought they were safe will find themselves looking for work, and a lot of free agents who thought they were going to break the bank will find themselves taking one-year deals wherever they can get them. The Browns will be potentially in position to attract multiple of these recognizable names with gas in the tank who can come in and help. And the challenge is, where do you stop? How many can you really fit? how far do you go? Okay, we want J.J. Watt. If you don't get him, okay, we want this guy. How many can we get? When do we have to say enough's enough, or we're going to get ourselves into a cap problem? Good problem to have if you're the Browns, because where they are right now, you add 2 or 3 guys. It doesn't take many to push you to the next level, especially when you get Odell Beckham Jr. back, assuming he's healthy. But you add a couple of guys who can come in, make a difference, and J.J. Watt makes a difference on the field and off the field. Great member of the community, sell a ton of jerseys, 99 jersey in brown and white or orange or whatever. That will be a big item, even though folks know it's a short-time relationship between the Browns and J.J. Watt. It's just fascinating to think that this Browns team that has been downtrodden for so long is a player now. That's the big takeaway I have from that. Even if they're being used by J.J. Watt as leverage to get the Steelers to figure their stuff out quickly so they don't have to deal with J.J. Watt twice per year and compete with him otherwise every week of the year in the division, the fact that the Browns can even be used as that candidate to be the leverage item with a straight face is a sign that the Browns are here. Whether they stay or not, we'll see. That applies to any team. We don't know. Time will tell, but at least they're here, something they haven't been in a very long time.
Mike, let me ask you this question, because I'm curious about what you would think of this. I have heard that J.J. Watt, out of great respect to his brother, T.J., might not want to go to Pittsburgh. And I've heard that. I don't know how true it is because obviously I have not talked to Watt himself. But one of the things that interests me about that is, you know that when J.J. Watt shows up in a place, especially if you're still doing things virtually, who's the one guy who everybody is going to ask to interview? On many, many occasions, J.J. Watt. He's a fountain. He's always been sort of team spokesman. And maybe he tells whoever he signs with, I don't want that role anymore. I don't, that's not me. That shouldn't be me. I don't know. But I do think that J.J. Watt walking into a locker room to some degree is sucking the air out of the room. So I think that is one thing to watch for. And you tell me if you think that might be even a little bit of a factor.
Let me agree with you and take it in a slightly different direction. T.J. Watt is entering the final year of his contract with the Steelers, $10 million in his option season as a result of being a first-round pick. He doesn't have a long-term deal yet. And if J.J. Watt would sign a 2-year deal with the Steelers, that complicates things for T.J. Watt's long-term contract, because does he walk away after next year? Do the Steelers think that they can squeeze TJ to take a little bit less so he can keep playing with his brother? Like, it just complicates the negotiation if JJ's part of the team. Whereas TJ can just focus on getting what he already deserves but hasn't gotten yet from the Steelers after 4 seasons of great performances. What are they going to do going into this year? Would they franchise tag him next year? Where's that relationship? And I think that's a complicating factor, in addition to the possibility of J.J. Watt, as you said, sucking the air out of the room, and all of a sudden nobody wants to talk to TJ and everybody wants to talk to J.J., and he overshadows his younger brother. Just the fact that J.J.'s made his money and TJ's in position to make his, and having J.J. on the team could complicate that. I think that's another reason to not do it. Now, is that a reason to stay in the division? I think that's a reason to join the Packers. Like you said, all things equal, he goes to the Packers. And I'm fascinated by the possibility of J.J. and T.J. Watt on opposite ends of the Browns-Steelers rivalry, but I don't know that that's ideal for them unless they truly can compartmentalize their relationship as brothers with their relationship as competitors.
I think that's a really good point. The one other team in here that could be in here, I think that obviously J.J. Watt wants to play with a team that can win a Super Bowl next year or the year after. So I think really there's 2 teams that, we haven't talked about a lot, or maybe you have, but I haven't heard talked about a lot. They've been mentioned, but Tennessee and Buffalo. And I think both of those teams, quite honestly, could contend to play deep, very deep into the season next year. because of all the complementary parts they have all over the roster. But, Mike, I'm not sure that Cleveland is just a stalking horse, if indeed they're seriously involved. And that is because, teams in the NFL take a jump all the time. And if you look at that roster and look and see how many high draft choices they have on their team, how many really good players they have on their team who are on the verge of really doing something great, I could see him saying, I can see the Browns winning, especially because, look, the Steelers are no lock to own that division. And, I think the Ravens probably entering next year, at least to me, would be, I would think they would be the presumptive favorite over Pittsburgh. And I think some people would say, let's give it to Cleveland. So Cleveland is definitely in that race. The one other thing I would say, though, is it's really, really tough in the AFC because probably you're going to have to get by, and there's a good chance on the road, Kansas City, even next year. And I'm not trying to be, put the ball too far down the field this early, but I have to think that of all the 32 teams in the NFL, if you had to ask me, give me one team as the favorite for home field in its conference in 2021, I'd say Kansas City again for the fourth consecutive year.
You're touching on a good point as it relates to trying to figure out now, if you're J.J. Watt, which horse you're going to climb onto, because there are so many factors, so many variables, so much stuff still to be determined. He signs a contract today. It's before the potential purge of veterans for cap reasons. It's before free agency where you can maybe go out and get some bargain basement level veterans that help make you better. It's before the draft even happens, for crying out loud. And all you can do, Miles Simmons and I last night on PFTPM were talking about this. It's a pass-fail analysis. There are teams that are above the line and teams that are below the line. The Browns are above the line. The Titans, who John Robinson, the GM yesterday, I don't know, he's either keeping his cards close to the vest or he's really interested or not. I mean, he said what GMs have to say, which is basically nothing. But they could be interested. The Bills, like that would make sense. Those are all teams on the right side of the line. They're in contention. And beyond that, you have no idea. No one does how the dominoes are going to fall. One injury changes everything. And we know the injuries happen. All the time we spend from February until September prognosticating about the season to come, it all falls apart once guys start getting injured and everything changes. And that's the thing. If you're J.J. Watt and you don't have a crystal ball, all you can do is pick one of the teams that reasonably seems to be in position to contend, and everything after that is yet to be written.
Here's the question. As you spoke about that, I kept thinking to myself, what would happen if Andy Reid said to Brett Veach this week, hey, listen, let's carve out something somehow. They're whatever, $20 million over the projected cap, and they would have to probably have some ugly decisions. They would probably have to make some ugly decisions that would hurt their team. But just imagine if they saw, we want one more piece on that defensive front, and they could get J.J. Watt, and they told Watt, listen, sign a 3-year deal, have the number be very small in your first year, and, help us out on the contract, and you come in, and, we'll guarantee it, but we're going to backload this. And basically, Mike, I honestly think if I'm J.J. Watt and I want to win a Super Bowl and I don't know how many years I'm going to play, I'm serious. I am pushing either the Packers or the Chiefs. I'm pushing the two teams this year that won home field. Because, look, honestly, you can't look at Tampa Bay and think there could be anything serious there. Because Tampa Bay's on record as saying we're signing everybody. And once they start throwing guys overboard to add different guys, all of a sudden, the chemistry inside the team, everybody said, hey, wait a second. And Ndamukong Suh wants to come back another year. You brought in J.J. Watt? I thought we were a family. And that's a naive thing to say, obviously. But that is what I could see happening. So I'm just eliminating the Bucs right now.
You're
But
making a
the
good
two
point, though.
teams-
I don't think. But hang on a second. I don't think that's a naive thing to say, Peter, because the vibes coming from the Bucs over the past week have been consistent with that. So if they don't behave that way,
Right.
they're creating a problem because they've already written the checks to keep the guys. At least they've done
That's
it
the point.
verbally.
That's the point.
And if they
So
screw
you
these
can't-
guys over, they are going to have trouble. You can't do it. I agree
Yeah,
with
so
you.
you can't. J.J. Watt can't really be on Tampa Bay's list. Not that he would be on their list anyway. I mean, especially if they bring Shaq Barrett back. If they have Barrett and JPP, and then they have at least one of the two guys in the middle, Vita Vea, Vita Vea's coming back, or Ndamukong Suh, it's hard to imagine that they would spend money on J.J. Watt. So that's why I would eliminate him. But anyway, the two teams that if I were him and I was really focusing on trying to win in the next couple of years, those are the two teams I'd go to the general managers of each thing and just say, if you've got interest, we will be very friendly contractually. Now, that's not a Tom Condon way, Mike. Tom Condon is an excellent, excellent agent. Obviously, he's been doing it forever, and he's not going to give away any of his leverage. But I think this might be a case where J.J. Watt says to his agent, hey, listen, I don't really care what the money is. Get me to Green Bay or get me wherever it is that he really wants to go.
Yeah, I mean, the best agents make their clients happy and meet their expectations. And if Watt says, this is what I want, he's made his money. He can go wherever he wants to go. And then it becomes a question of, especially in Green Bay, what are they willing to do to enhance their short-term chances, right? Last year, first-round pick plus a fourth-round pick used to get a backup quarterback who didn't play at all in 2020. Could have been useful in the NFC Championship against the Buccaneers. What will they do? And they do have their own issues as well. Aaron Jones, running back, becoming a free agent. Corey Linsley, center, becoming a free agent. Other guys lesser in value to the team. What are we going to do with them? Well, we're going to get rid of some veterans. Are we going to have money available? How's this going to work? But they'd have to at least, I think, show some interest in working something out, some interest in adding a guy like J.J. Watt to the team if they believe it will make them better. That's the other side of this, though. Given his age, given his injury history, will you have general managers on contending teams say, let's not get caught up in this. Let's not fall victim to the land rush for a guy.
Great question.
We don't have the certainty is really going to make a difference. It's going to make a buzz. We're going to sell a lot of jerseys. People are going to care about us. But is it really going to make a difference for us in December, January, and hopefully February?
That's the question that everybody has to ask. To me, it's very similar to Carson Wentz. You look at J.J. Watt of 4 and 5 years ago, and even a couple of years ago, he had a very good year. And it's the same thing. Look at Carson Wentz in 2017, and you say, man, look at him. Boy, if he can just do that. And that is the big issue if you're a general manager in this case. Just 1 second on Chris Ballard of the Indianapolis Colts. You not only have to look at the fact that you need a long-term quarterback, and Carson Wentz is very young, and 3 years ago he was a top 5 quarterback in the league. You not only have to look at that, you have to look at what is he now and what will he be for the next 7 or 8 years. And you have to then value that. What is that worth? That's why Howie Roseman is unable to make a trade right now, because his value of Carson Wentz is so much different. And that's why I think when you look at J.J. Watt, it's got to be somebody who truly believes in J.J. Watt, and who, if you, for instance, will look at Pro Football Focus and you will look at what he did last year, J.J. Watt was a top 10 when he played interior last year, not edge, but when he played interior, he was a top 10 player at his position, the defensive interior in the NFL. And so if you look at that and you believe that you're going to get 12 or 13 games out of him, and you believe that you can disrupt offenses from the inside and not just from the outside, you go after J.J. Watt and you go after him hard.
I wonder how much the courtship and ultimate performance of Jadeveon Clowney last year in Tennessee after multiple teams were trying
They're different
people,
ways
to get him. I know. But when you have the decision makers in the room and somebody's going to be the naysayer, that's going to be the example they point to with these older guys with injury histories, money in a year of a depressed salary cap. Should we do it? Maybe we shouldn't do it. Maybe we should learn from what happened with the Titans. And then maybe somebody else is like, I don't want to be in a position where Joe's going to tell me I told
here's
you
the
so
difference, Mike.
If JJ gets injured in October.
Why did the Atlanta Falcons not re-sign Vic Beasley? Because they thought he didn't love football. Okay? Why was it so hard for Jadeveon Clowney to get a long-term contract somewhere? Because teams are not convinced that he's going to work hard in the offseason, that he's going to be fully, totally dedicated to be a great football player. He is a great football player often, okay? But I don't think he's one of those guys I'd want to pay $20 million a year to over on a 5-year deal. But I think Watt is different. You never have to worry. You have to worry about injury with Watt without any question. You don't have to worry about any other thing than injury. Hey, and that's a big deal. Don't get me wrong. But you don't have to worry about desire or what they really want out of life. J.J. Watt wants to be the greatest football player he can be. That's his whole goal. That's what drives him every day. So I really wouldn't compare him to those other guys.
The other teams that are in the mix, or at least would like to be in the mix, based upon the opinions of their players, just a couple of who have gone public. DeAndre Hopkins, teammate of Watt's with the Houston Texans, takes to Instagram to court J.J. Watt with a great Photoshop. I mean, that's a great one. That one fooled me. I'm thinking, when did the Texans wear black jerseys with red numbers? No, that's a Photoshop of Watt in the Cardinals uniform, and Stephon Diggs also would like to get J.J. Watt.
Even with the Larry Wilson patch on it, Mike.
Yes, the 8-ball patch. It's very well done. And Buffalo Bills would like to get J.J. Watt, or at least Stephon Diggs would. Just hear me out real quick, big fella. These aren't the people who make the decisions, obviously, but this just adds to the intrigue because players in today's age can go public worldwide anytime they want to express their opinions. And that may frustrate the people who have their fingers on the purse strings because it creates expectations they may not fulfill. Yeah. But we'll see how that plays out.
Hi, I'm Mike Tirico, and thanks for watching. Make sure to hit subscribe for the latest news and highlights from NBC Sports.